now that we've walked through it, Pastor Z, we understand a little bit more about the details of what Holy Week is all about, why we celebrate it, and why it's so important in Christianity, not even in Christianity, but in the whole of history. I mean, we could start talking about how the resurrection of Jesus started off so many other historical uh, circumstances, right? And important events in history because of that. But I wanted to talk about now the practical ways that we should be celebrating Holy Week as Christians. Because as you mentioned, di ba parang bakit nga ba natin sobrang sineselebrate ang Christmas season but not Holy Week? So what should be your disposition when we're celebrating Holy Week? Kailangan ba laging may fasting? What are some of the things that we could be focusing on as a testament to our faith when it is Holy Week? This approaching Holy Week.
Yeah, I think, we already have currently the cultural tools that are available for us to maximize our reflection and appreciation of Holy Week. We get a full weekend off, and now we're given the opportunity to, have a bit of downtime. So I think that downtime helps us to consider that maybe during this week we can approach it with a certain level of openness or humility into what the Lord is teaching us or wants us to learn in this season.
Yeah.
So fasting is definitely a great tool, to sort of, you know, get you into connection with, the sacrificial experience of Christ. And so that's why when we withhold, like traditionally, we try, the Roman Catholic tradition, meat is removed from the diet every Friday. Yes, that's why, we're encouraged to eat fish or other things. So some people, like, withdrawal from food is such a huge sacrifice.
Yeah.
But it could be like other things that you want to offer as, withdrawal or as a restriction for you, if only to act as a tool to enter into that space that this was a really difficult time of Jesus. And so I wouldn't be so legalistic about, what you need to do, but it's more of like, how you come into the season in trying to connect with the passion and death of Christ. And so I think that's what's hard, because even though you mentioned earlier that it is a very human experience to, to be vulnerable, like in the garden, it's also a very uncomfortable position.
Yeah.
Truth is, none of us desire that.
Yeah.
Like we want to avoid that as much as possible. We don't want pain. We don't want suffering. We just want to think about, God giving us blessings, rewarding us for our good deeds. But this Holy Week is a huge challenge, because now it really hits us hard that if God did not spare his only son from suffering and pain, how much more should we consider that pain and suffering are natural, are natural God-given tools in our lives to mold us into what he wants us to be. And I think that's a very crucial reflection that we can try to come face to face with in Holy Week, is, in light of, how a lot of, focus on prosperity, on health and wealth is just being broadcasted to a lot of churches. The Holy Week actually helps us see that it's not all about health and wealth.
Yeah.
It's not all about just feeling good.
Boom, canceled. Charing.
Canceling me. So, but we're really like looking at Jesus, and if he suffered, then why are we complaining about our own suffering? Why do we question what happens to us when the Lord puts challenges and trials in our path? So in a way, Holy Week draws us in to the suffering of Christ, because it also comes we also come face to face with how we deal with suffering and evil here on earth as well.
Yeah.
And that's just like learning how to grow in that, like learning how to process our own suffering, our own challenges, our own crosses in this world is such an important grace, such an important lesson that will spell out how we can overcome as Christians in this world.
That's so difficult though,
Mm.
because instead of asking why me, you ask why not me.
Mm.
That's such a difficult thing to do, especially when you're in the thick of suffering and pain. And of course, you have this reflection of Jesus also went through much worse for me. So suffering and pain is a tool through which the Father prunes his children to become more Christ-like.
Mm.
Exactly what happened to Christ on the cross, right? It's the pruning and death on the cross so that by the altar you are renewed and rebirthed. But the question of why not me is such a difficult question. And it's something that I've actually been ruminating on recently. Na oo nga, no? Especially when you have children, I've realized that you want to avoid as much pain and suffering for
For
your
them, for
children.
them, yeah,
You
yeah,
don't
yeah,
want, like, if I
yeah.
could take it on as much as possible, I don't want my children to take on anything. But then I was reading this book that talked about, and even in biblical reflections, you see it, na you coddle a child to protect them and to care for them so much, it will be to their detriment,
Mm.
because the pain and the suffering actually leads to something that is good,
Mm.
like what we see in Holy Week.